So, as we told, get init parameter will return those init parameter. Okay, whatever the init parameters that we call them as parameters specific to a servlet will be returned by init parameter. Multiple parameters will be returned by init parameter values. We will discuss that later on in detail. You need to note it down. Okay, get servlet name will return the name of the servlet that we have configured in the web.xml. Get servlet name will return the name of the servlet that we have configured in the web.xml. See, if this is the servlet and this has a servlet config, that config.getServlet name will give this name, the servlet name that we have configured in the web.xml. Okay, and get servlet context will return the servlet context object. We'll see what is the servlet context later on. Okay, you will come to know. By the end of this class, you will come to know the whole thing. Okay, but note it down that get servlet context is a method of servlet config which will return the servlet context. Even servlet context is also a interface. Okay, even servlet context is also a interface. Okay, so and there will be a class named javax.servlet.GenericServlet. There will be a class javax.servlet.GenericServlet. Okay, which is implementing with all these interfaces. This GenericServlet implements servlet interface and servlet config interface and serializable interface. Okay, GenericServlet is a class. GenericServlet is a class which implements with servlet config, serializable. So all the methods from servlet interface and all the methods from servlet config interface will be inherited to GenericServlet. Now, is there any concrete method in these 8 methods? Is there any concrete method in these 8 methods? Here in servlet we have 4 methods: init, service, destroy, servlet config. Init parameter values, servlet name and servlet context. These are methods present in servlet and servlet config. Is there any concrete method in these 8 methods? Is there any concrete method in these 8 methods? Yes or no? Is there any concrete method in these 8 methods? Do you know what is a concrete method? A method that is not abstract is called as concrete method. Okay? And now what I am asking is there any concrete methods in this 8 method? Definitely no. Just because servlet is an interface, servlet config is a interface. Interface methods cannot be concrete. All these 8 are abstract methods. Okay? So all these 8 methods will be inherited from servlet and servlet config to GenericServlet. Okay? Among these methods, all the methods are implemented in GenericServlet. All the methods are implemented in GenericServlet except service method. Service method is a abstract method still in GenericServlet. Even in GenericServlet also, service method is a abstract method. So if at least one method is there and if at least one abstract method is there in the class, means we should make the class as abstract. So for that reason, GenericServlet is a abstract method. Sorry, abstract class. GenericServlet is an abstract class just because it has an abstract method service. But service is not native method of this GenericServlet. It is inherited from servlet interface. Still, it is abstract. Except service, all the methods are implemented in GenericServlet class. Except service, all the methods are implemented in GenericServlet class. Only service method is left as abstract. But whatever it might be, even a single method is abstract in my class means the class should be abstract. So for that reason, GenericServlet is a abstract class. Okay? And why service method is not overridden in GenericServlet? That will be a question asked by the interviewer. Why service method is not overridden in the GenericServlet class? Okay? Just because GenericServlet is a servlet which is generic or which is common to all the protocols. GenericServlet is a servlet which is generic or which is common to all the protocols. Either FTP or HTTP or SMTP. There might be any number of protocols available in the market. Okay? But GenericServlet is a class or is an entity which is generic or which is common to all the servlets. So, let's consider like there is a servlet which is of FTP protocol. Even for that, GenericServlet is a superclass. Okay? If there is a servlet of HTTP protocol, even for that, GenericServlet is a superclass. Let us consider like there is another servlet which is of SMTP protocol. Even for that servlet, GenericServlet is a superclass. So, GenericServlet is a common superclass, a generic class, a generalized entity for all the servlet classes, whatever the protocol it might be. But the service method is supposed to have protocol specific logic. Service method is supposed to have protocol specific handling logic. Okay? The service method, intention of service method is to have the protocol handling logic. The protocol handling logic will be there in the service method. The intention of service method is to have the protocol handling logic. So, now, at the stage of GenericServlet, can we define the protocol handling logic? At the stage of GenericServlet, can we define the protocol handling logic? See, leave about abstract, leave about service method. See, let's leave about service method. At the time of GenericServlet, at the stage of GenericServlet, can we really define the protocol handling logic? No. Why? Since it is generic for all the protocols. Since it is generic for all the protocols. If you don't know what protocol it is, how we can come to know, how we can write the protocol handling logic? See, service method is supposed to have protocol handling logic, but GenericServlet is generic for all the protocols. For what protocol we will write the protocol handling logic? It's not possible. So, for that reason, service is a abstract method in GenericServlet. Understood? Why GenericServlet has service as still abstract? Service method is supposed to have the protocol handling logic, but the protocol is not known at the stage of GenericServlet. GenericServlet doesn't have any protocol information, or GenericServlet is not specific to any protocol. It is common or it is generic to all the protocols. For that reason, service method is still abstract in GenericServlet. Understood? So, in the Servlet API.jar, yeah, that's what I'm telling. This is not a method which is specific to GenericServlet. It is inherited from the Servlet interface. Just I have written just for your convenience, just to tell that it is abstract. I have specified already that service is not a specific method to generate servlet. It is inherited from servlet interface. Okay? No need to mention. Just for your information, for your flexibility, I have written that. Okay? Then in the Servlet API.jar, okay, and in most of the cases, in 99% of cases, the protocol that we use is a HTTP protocol. So in the Servlet API.jar, we have an implementation of HTTP protocol with the name HTTP Servlet. In Servlet API.jar, we have an implementation of HTTP protocol. We have a Servlet implementation of HTTP protocol with the name HTTP Servlet, which is there in javax.servlet.http package. So up to GenericServlet, all the entities are there in javax.servlet package, just because they are not specific to any protocol. But HTTP Servlet is there in javax.servlet.http package, just because it is specific to HTTP protocol. See, if you see the package structure of Servlet API, we have javax.servlet.http servlet. Okay, so all the entities that are specific to HTTP protocol are there in HTTP package. Understood? So HTTP Servlet implements the service method. HTTP Servlet is a class which is a subclass to GenericServlet. HTTP Servlet is a class which is a implementation of, or which is a subclass to GenericServlet. And in HTTP Servlet, service method is correctly implemented. Service method is implemented with HTTP protocol handling logic. The service method of HTTP Servlet contains HTTP protocol handling logic. Understood? So, service method in the HTTP Servlet is a concrete method. It's not an abstract method. Now, do we have any abstract methods in HTTP Servlet? See, among these 8 methods, 7 methods are implemented in GenericServlet. Only one method is abstract. That abstract method also will be inherited to HTTP Servlet. And that method also is implemented in HTTP Servlet. Then do we have any abstract methods? Do we have any abstract method in HTTP Servlet? No, we don't have any abstract methods. Still, HTTP Servlet is a abstract class. But HTTP Servlet doesn't contain any abstract methods. HTTP Servlet doesn't contain any abstract methods. Still, HTTP Servlet is a abstract class. HTTP Servlet doesn't contain any abstract methods. Still, it is an abstract class. Still, it is a abstract class. Okay? Then, in which scenario we make a class as abstract even though it doesn't contain any abstract methods? No. In which scenario we make a class as abstract even though it doesn't contain any abstract methods. I told this scenario specifically in our earlier classes. In which scenario we make a class as abstract even though it doesn't contain any abstract methods. In which scenario we make a class as abstract even though it doesn't contain any abstract method means if you want to restrict the instance creation or if you want to restrict the object creation for that class. If you want to restrict the object creation for that class for any reason, even though it doesn't have any abstract methods, we make the class as abstract. Please come once again. Where it is? If it is interface, we can restrict the object creation, but we don't have any concrete methods, right? Can we have concrete methods in the interface? No. Here in Servlet, we have concrete implementation. Still, even though if we have a concrete implementation for that class, if we want to restrict the object creation for that class, then we make the class as abstract. Only for that reason. Okay? See, HttpServlet is not an abstract class because it has abstract methods. It is an abstract class because we should restrict the object creation for that. For that reason, HttpServlet is an abstract class. Why we should restrict the object creation for HttpServlet means, okay, in general, the specific request handling or the specific business logic of a servlet should be written only in that servlet. We cannot do anything in the HttpServlet. We cannot write servlet specific business logic in the HttpServlet. But we can give some protocol handling logic and those logic in the HttpServlet. For that reason, we don't have any abstract methods. We don't have any abstract methods there in the HttpServlet. But we cannot do anything with the HttpServlet unless or otherwise we have a request handling logic, a business logic in the servlet. So, at the time of HttpServlet, we cannot write any business logic related to the request handling or business logic related to servlet. So, there is no need of creating object for HttpServlet. So, HttpServlet is abstract class just because we should restrict the creation of object. Understood? The request handling logic will be specific to specific servlet. We cannot write that logic in the HttpServlet. Okay? For that reason, HttpServlet object is not required for request handling. If HttpServlet object is not required, why to make it as a concrete class? We make it as an abstract class to avoid object creation even by mistake. If we let it as an object, if we let it as a concrete class, and if we tell a rule that you should not create object for this, we may or may not follow. It's possible to create object for that. But if we make it an abstract class, then nobody can create object for that. For that reason, HttpServlet is abstract class just to restrict the object creation of HttpServlet. Understood? Now, our servlet that we develop will extend to HttpServlet. Already we have seen that. Our servlet that we have developed has extended with HttpServlet. Now, where we have written the business logic? In which method we have written the business logic? Service method. Okay? Is it correct to write the business logic in the service method? Is it correct to write the business logic in the service method? What does the service method of HttpServlet contains? Protocol handling logic of HTTP protocol. But if you override service method, okay, do we miss that protocol handling logic? Yes or no? Why no? See, if we call login servlet, if we create a new login servlet object, and if we call the service method using that reference, which service method will be called? This service method or the HttpServlet service method? This service method. If this service method is executed, have we written any protocol handling logic here? Yes or no? Did we write any protocol handling logic here? No. Now, are we missing the protocol handling logic by overriding the service method? Understood my point? If you HttpServlet service method contains some protocol handling logic. As it is, that service method will be inherited to login servlet. If you don't override service method, what happens? Service method of HttpServlet will be executed. If service method of HttpServlet is executed, is the protocol handling logic will be available? Will it be available? Understood my point? See, the service method of HttpServlet will contain, let's consider like this is the service method which is inherited from HttpServlet, okay, which contains protocol handling logic. Now, what we are doing, this service method is as it is inherited into login servlet. In login servlet, what we are doing, we are overriding the service method. We are overriding the service method means we are redefining the service method. So that when I call login servlet.service, which method will be called? The service method which is inherited from HttpServlet or service method which is specific to login servlet? Login servlet, this method will be called, not this method. Service which is inherited from HttpServlet will not be called. Now, if I send a request, it will come here. So, for that request, is the protocol handling logic available? Yes or no? No. For that request, the protocol handling logic will not be available. Just because the protocol handling logic is there in the inherited service method. But since we have overridden method, the overridden method will be called. So, the protocol handling logic will not be available. Understood? Since the method inherited is overridden, the overridden logic will be executed, not the inherited logic. But the inherited logic contains the protocol handling. So, protocol handling is missing here. So, to avoid that, we won't override service method to write the business logic of servlet. We won't override the service method to write the business logic of the servlet. Understood? It's not the correct practice to override the service method to write the business logic of a servlet. It's a bad practice. Okay? It's a bad practice to override the service method to write the business logic of a servlet. Let's consider like I don't override the service method. And this is my business logic. Okay? I'm not overriding the service method. Let me copy and paste it here somewhere else. I am not overriding the service method, and so that I am using the service method of the HttpServlet. Now, do I have the protocol handling logic? Yes, I can have. But where do I write the business logic? Earlier we used to override service method and we used to write business logic. Now we told that it's not advisable, it's not a standard practice to override service method to write the business logic. Then where do I write the business logic then? Where do I write the business logic to the servlet? Means in HttpServlet, these are not there in the GenericServlet. In HttpServlet, there are two methods. Do get, do post. there are two methods in HttpServlet class. These are not inherited from GenericServlet. These are methods specific to HttpServlet. These are methods specific to HttpServlet. Since it is a basic application where we are printing some content to the browser, it is working. But if you go for something like session management or cookies, okay, or some extended things, it will not work. Since it is a basic thing, yes, it will work. But if you go for application with a higher end concept, with a higher end practices, then it will not work. Okay? See, we have do, post and do get methods in the HttpServlet. In HttpServlet we have two methods, do get and do post. Okay? What are the different methods of form submission? There are two different types of methods of form submission. Okay, there are several other methods also like put and all. Okay, but the most important and most frequently used are get and post. Okay, we should override do get method in the login servlet if the method of form submission is get. We should override do post method in the login servlet if the method of form submission is post. Understood? If the form is being submitted using method post, then do post should be overridden. If the form is submitted using method get, then do get should be overridden. So, let me take this login.html. How I am submitting the form? Either using get or post. Post. So, which method I should override in the login servlet? Do post. So, let me override the do post method. The same syntax, just the name changes. That's it. Same syntax of the service method except name. Okay. So, same syntax of the service method, do post which takes HttpServlet request, HttpServlet response, throws Servlet exception and IO exception. Okay. And I have already copied the business logic. Just I'll copy it from here and paste it here. So it's the same logic that I have executed. The same logic, earlier I have written it in service method, now I am writing it in do post method. But the advisable thing is to go for do post and do get only. Understood? Now I have saved it. Let me try to compile this. We try to stop the server, compile the application. It was compiled successful. Restart the server. Server restarted. Now, let me try to access the URL in the browser. Login.html. Rajesh 1 2 3. Okay. So the request has been submitted to this page. Okay, and the content that is there in the doPost method is printed here. Okay, and if you see the console from the servlet, that means doPost is being executed. Now let us consider that the method of form submission is I'm submitting this same form using the method get. What is the method that I have overridden in the login servlet? doPost. Okay, the method that I have overridden in the login servlet is doPost. Okay, now let's stop the server. Start the compile application. Restart the server. The server is started. Okay, now let me try to go to the application, enter some values, submit here. Let me start the server. Have I saved that? doPost is fine, get is fine. Compile the application. Start the server. Let me go to the application. I have refreshed the page. See what is this giving? HTTP status 405. HTTP method get is not supported by this URL. Okay, that means if you override doPost method if the form submission is get, or the worst case, if you override doGet method when the form submission is post, that means it's something like a incompatible method of form submission. Incompatible method of form submission. When that is the case, it will give a 405 exception. Okay, incompatible method of form submission. If it is get, in the servlet also it should be get. If it is post, in the servlet also it should be post. Understood? So, the method of form submission and the method that we override should be compatible. Okay? How the exception is raised means, in the HttpServlet doGet method there is nothing, just they will throw exception with something, okay, with some error code. Okay, the doPost method also just they will throw the exception with some error code, an error message. Okay, now let's consider that login servlet extend to HttpServlet and we have overridden doPost method. And we are submitting the form using method equal to get. Now, what happens? It actually where it should go? If the form submission is get, where it will go? doGet method. doGet method, does doGet method exist in the login servlet? No. Where it will go? HttpServlet. In the HttpServlet doGet method, what it happens? Throw new servlet exception with some error code. So, if the HttpServlet class doGet or doPost are triggered, then they will raise a exception. When they are triggered, when the corresponding doGet or doPost are not overridden in the current class. If they are overridden in the current class, what happens? The overridden methods will be executed. If they are not overridden in the current class, the control will go to the superclass, and in the superclass they will raise a exception. Understood how it happens? Understood? Really? So, this is how the exception is being raised when we submit the form using method get and we override do post, or when you submit using post and we override do get. Just simply if we submit the form using get, definitely do get should be called. Either it might be do get of the login servlet or do get of the what we call HttpServlet. Okay, so here in the login servlet we don't have any do get, so it will go to the do get method of the HttpServlet. But in the do get method of the HttpServlet, just there is nothing, just it will throw an exception. So if we submit the form using get, it is the responsibility of the developer to override the do get method, which is post override the do post method. Understood? Sometimes the developers will be overriding both the methods, do get as well as do post. So whatever the method it is, like this. In many of the cases, developers will do like this. In most of the cases, people will do like this. Then write a generic method. Okay. Jail throw exception. Okay, they will write the business logic here. So, what happens? Either it is get or post, this logic will be executed. So, this can handle both get and post. Understood what we have done? Sorry, the method name is not there, right? So copy and paste for now. So we throw Servlet exception, IO exception. Understood what we have done? See, rather than writing business logic in both do get and do post, whatever the form submission it might be, okay, just we write a generic method which handles the request. It will be executed by do post as well as do get. Understood? It will serve both the things. Either the form submission might be get or post. It will serve the purpose. Understood? Just the business logic is written in a generic method, in a private method, and the private method is called from do get as well as do post. Okay, like this we will do in general. Understood? So let me go back. Let me go back to the previous thing. See, if we write more methods, it will become more complex to see. Let me go back to like this. We generally do in the applications. Okay, we'll make the servlet to be capable of handling both the methods, whether get or post. Okay, like this we'll write in general. Okay, but let me go to the previous example where we have only do get or do post, only one method. Now we have only one method, which is do post. Okay. Now if we submit the form using method get, then it will raise a 405 exception. If you submit the form using method post, and if you already do get also, it will be the same. Understood? Now, this is how the request handling and the hierarchy of entities and the methods in the servlet will be used. Understood? How the hierarchy will be and how the methods are used and how the methods, what are the methods overridden in a specific case. Understood? If you understood this part, then we'll switch over to the next concept, life cycle of a servlet. Have you understood till now? What are the methods used and what is the importance of each and every method? Okay. Now, if you have got this, the next thing that we need to discuss is life cycle of a servlet. How and when the servlet is initiated, how and when the servlet is eliminated or destroyed, how and when the servlet is used for request handling, all those things that we will discuss. Okay, all those will come under the servlet life cycle. What is the life cycle of a servlet? Okay, how it is initiated, how it is destructed, that we will discuss. The next concept, and a very important concept for interviews, is servlet life cycle. Okay. Let's consider like we have a web application in my Tomcat server. I have started the Tomcat server. Okay. When I start the Tomcat server, some of the people will think like, if you have a server in application, if you have a application, a web application in a server, okay, which contains some 4 or 5 servlets. Let's consider like there is a web application in a server which has 4 or 5 servlets. Okay. Many of the people will think that the servlet life cycle will be started whenever the server is started, but it is not correct. The servlet life cycle will not be started when the server is started. Okay? Servlet life cycle will not be started when the server is started. When the servlet life cycle will be started means when the servlet life cycle is started. When the servlet life cycle is started means when we send the first request to the servlet. When the first request is sent to the servlet. When the first request is sent to the servlet, then itself the servlet life cycle will be initiated. Let's consider like I have stopped the server. Okay, I stop the server, I restart the server. Now the server is started. At this point of time, the servlet will not be available. The servlet life cycle has not yet started. Okay, servlet is not available and the servlet life cycle is not yet started at this point of time. Okay, when the servlet life cycle will be started means when we start the server, after starting the server, we send a first request to the servlet. When we send a first request to the servlet. Now, at this point of time, when we execute this login.html, is my servlet life cycle, is login servlet life cycle started? Is login servlet life cycle started when I execute login.html? Yes or no? No. What you guys are doing? Are you dumb or deaf? Just tell something yes or no, or just tell something some version of yours. Will you be dumb even in interviews? Try to have some spirit. My question is the Servlet lifecycle started when I execute login.html? Yes or no? No. Why the Servlet lifecycle is not started means still a request is not sent to that login servlet. When the request is sent to the login servlet means when we submit on submit button. Okay. Now a request is sent to the login servlet and then the Servlet lifecycle is initiated. When we click or when we send a request to the servlet for the first time, then itself the Servlet lifecycle will be started. Understood? So when we send the first request to the servlet, okay, then the Servlet lifecycle is started. Then what are the things happen? Means, okay. What are the things that will happen? Okay. First thing that will happen is the Tomcat server or whatever the web server it might be. We can deploy a web application in either Tomcat or Glassfish or any web servers. But whatever the whatever the web server it might be, the process is same. First, the web server will create an instance. Instance and object are one and the same. Create an instance of Servlet class. That means the web server will create an object to the Servlet class which we are triggering, which we are requesting. Okay? When a first request is sent to the servlet, or let me not make it the first step. When the first request is sent to the servlet, the first step that happens is instance of the Servlet class is created. Okay? And then the second thing that is done is instance to Servlet config object is created. Instance to Servlet config is created. A instance to Servlet config is created. See why this Servlet config is used? To represent some parameters or properties which are specific to the servlet. So, an instance to Servlet config is created. Servlet config is interface. Okay. So, how an instance is created means it is created. Instance will be created for a implementation, an anonymous implementation for Servlet config. Okay. Then the next step. Okay. Now let's consider like we have the server will create a object. Let's consider like that. The servlet will create a object to login servlet. Sorry, servlet container, whatever we call the Tomcat server. Okay, or whatever the web server we use. Okay, it has created an object to the servlet that we are triggering. Okay, object is created, then Servlet config object is created, then the init method will be executed by passing the Servlet config object created in the second step. Okay, the init method is executed. The init method will take a Servlet config. Is executed. Init method which takes a Servlet config is executed. Okay. In which object this init method exists? In which object this init method exists? In which object this init method exists? In which object the init method exists? login servlet? Just because the init method is inherited from servlet to GenericServlet, from GenericServlet to HttpServlet, from HttpServlet to login servlet. So the login servlet object's init method is executed. Understood? First, login servlet object is created. Okay, init method of init method of servlet object created in step 1 is executed by passing servlet config object created in step 2. Understood my point? See, init method will take a servlet config. Whose init method? Which object init method is executed means init method of login servlet object is executed. Okay, where we are creating an object to login servlet? In the first step, we are creating the web server will create an object to login servlet. In the second step, servlet config object is created. In the third step, init method will be executed. Whose init method means login servlet object init method will be executed. Okay, where login servlet object is created? In the step 1. So init method of the object which is created in the step 1 is executed by passing what it requires. The init method requires one argument, that is a servlet config object. From where we will get the servlet config object means that is created in the step 2. Understood? Okay. And what init method will do? What init method will do means init method will dump all the init parameters into the select config object. What init method will do means init method which takes the select config will dump all the init parameters into into servlet config object. Will dump all the init parameters into servlet config object. Understood? Will dump all the init parameters into servlet config object. Okay. Now, what are the other types of parameters that we have? Right now, we have discussed what is the init parameter. Did we discuss any other types of parameters? No? Did we discuss any other types of parameters? Any other type of parameters? No? Not it? No. Just search for a word specific parameter. Did I tell any word within a parameter in my earlier class? Okay. I told that the parameters that we send from the browser to the server, okay, through a request are called as request parameters. I already told that from the browser to the server, if we send any parameters, those parameters are called as request parameters. Those request parameters will go through request line if the method of form submission is get or it is a hyperlink. The same request parameters will go to the server through the request body if the request is submitted using method post. Okay, so those are called as request parameters. See, if you go to the login servlet, let me submit the form using method post. Okay, and let me try to refresh. So, whatever the username and password that we send, these values will go to the server when you click on submit. Okay, how these values will go means through a request body if it is post, through the request line if it is get, something like a query string. Okay, but these parameters that we send are called as request parameters. The name of the request parameter will be there in the HTML component. The name of username parameter, the first parameter will be username, name of the second parameter will be password. The value of the parameters will be, what are the values of the parameter? What is the value of the parameter? The value of the parameter will be the values that we enter in username and the value that we enter in password. Those are the values. Names will be there here. Names will be here. Name equal to something and something. The values will be the values that we enter in the fields. Okay. These parameters that we send from the browser to the server are called as request parameters. Okay. Now, can you tell that request parameters will be generic to the servlet, or will those request parameters specific to a request? See, let's consider like for a servlet, can I send only one set of request parameters? For a servlet, can I send only one set of request parameters, or can we send multiple sets of request parameters to a servlet? Only one? For a servlet, can we send only one set of request parameters, or can we send multiple sets of request parameters to a servlet? Based on? However we implement that in the backend, that doesn't define the number of requests that we send. Understood? Once the request reaches the server, after that we can write in a business logic, like it is a duplicate request. But can we restrict that only 1000 requests should reach the server? No. If it is a Gmail, can we restrict that only 100 users should use my Gmail? No. But if 1 lakh of users use the Gmail at the same time, what happens? The server will become busy, so that it will become inefficient. That doesn't mean that the server will not accept the 1000 requests or 1 lakh of requests. There are 1 lakh of requests, whatever the time it may take 1 day to reach the server. But definitely they will reach the server. Now, what I am asking is, if there is a servlet, for a servlet, can we send only one set of request parameters, or can we send any number of sets of request parameters? Any number of sets of request parameters that we can send. Understood? What Mr. Babu? Got it? Got it or not? No? Let's consider like, here this is my Gmail application. I am entering username and password and submit. Now, are my request parameters going to the server? Do you know what is request parameter? Understood what is a request parameter? Let's consider like this is a Gmail application. I am entering username and password and clicking on submit. The values that we enter, the username and password, okay, those are the request parameter values. Okay, and the fields that we give here, these are the request parameter names. Okay, so how they will go to the server means, let's consider like we'll send it through get. We'll send it through get. So let me go to login.html. Okay, I click on submit. Okay, now what are the request parameters that we have? One is username, second is password. What is the value for the request parameter? Rajesh, password is 1234. Okay, now let me go back. Let me take another browser. Here it is. Let me take another browser where I go for the same page. Okay, if I submit here, now is it the same request parameters that we are going to sending to Servlet or different? Different. I don't want this or this. Just speak out. Speak out loudly. I did not hear you. Speak out loudly, man. Is this, I'm not asking yes or no. Is this the same request parameters going to the server or different request parameters going to the server? I'm not asking yes or no. Got me? I'm not asking yes or no. I'm asking a question. The same set of request parameters are going to the server for two different requests, or two different sets of request parameters are going to the server. Answer my question. What, man? Answer my question. Do you want me to repeat the question? Speak out. Do you think I am a joker here? Then, if I am asking questions with such a loud voice, why can't you answer? I am repeating the question. I am using the login.html page to submit one request with username Babu and password is 1234. I am submitting the request to the Servlet. The request has gone to the server with username Babu and password 1234. Username is one request parameter and password is another request parameter with different sets of values. Okay? Now, I am going to login.html in another browser. Okay? And I am entering username and password. Now, is the same request, is the same set of request parameters going to the server, or is it different set of request parameters going to the server? Same or different? Same set of request parameters going to the servlet? Request parameter name is same, but the request parameter value is different. The request parameter value is different, then it will be different sets of request parameters. So, can we tell that a servlet will have only one set of request parameters? Can we tell that a servlet has only one set of request parameters? What are you doing, man? What are you listening? Is that your capability? See, if you are not speaking out, you cannot get anything. You can live for the day and you can do any job which is suitable for you. This is a profession where we need to speak out. We need to speak out loudly. This is a profession where we should speak out in such a way that we have done 100% even though if we have done 10%. This is an industry where communication is the most important thing. This is an industry where we need to make our voice loud, make our voice confident. What? Will you speak out? Can I try 1 second? Still you are telling. Is that the way to answer? Just speak out. Speak out, man. Same parameters but different values. The same parameters with different values are there. Can we tell them as different sets of parameters? Different. Okay. Now, can we restrict that a servlet should have only one set of request parameters? No. We cannot restrict that a servlet should have only one set of request parameters. But init parameters only, the init parameters will be specific to a servlet, so that there will be only one set of init parameters for a servlet. But we cannot restrict that there should be only one set of request parameters. We can make some thousands and lakhs of requests to the same servlet. Okay? So there can be any number of requests for the servlet, but for all the requests, the init parameters will be the same. For all the requests, the init parameters will be the same. Just because they are parameters that are specific to a servlet. For all the requests to a servlet, let's consider like login servlet has 1000 requests. Okay, we send 1000 requests to the login servlet. Even if we send 1000 requests to the login servlet, okay, the number of init parameters will be the same. It will not change. Just because they are parameters that are specific to a servlet. But there are 1000 requests we send to the servlet. There will be 1000 sets of request parameters. Understood? Understood? I did not listen to you. Understood? I did not listen to you. Speak it loud. Just speak with this voice whenever you speak with me. Okay? So, in the step 1, an instance to servlet class will be created. So, an object to login servlet will be created. In the step 2, an instance to servlet config object will be created. So, a instance to servlet config will be created, or an object of servlet config will be created. Okay? And in the step 3, by passing the servlet config created in the step 2, we call the init method of the object created in the step 1. Okay? So, what init method will do means, it will dump all the init parameters into the servlet config object. And the next step is create HttpServlet request, HttpServlet response objects. The next step will be the web server will create HttpServlet request and HttpServlet response object. HttpServlet request, HttpServlet response object. Okay. After creating HttpServlet and response, in the same step or different, whatever it might be, the same process what it will do means dump all the request parameters and their values or dump all the request parameters and their values into the HttpServlet request object. Understood? So in the first step, first a servlet request object will be created, a servlet response object will be created by the server itself. Server itself will create request as well as response objects. Okay, Servlet itself will create the request as well as response objects. Okay, sorry, the server, not the Servlet. The web server itself will create the request and response objects. And after creating the request and response objects, okay, the request parameters will be dumped into the request object. The request parameters and their values will be dumped into request object. Understood? Request and response objects will be created by the web server, and then the request parameters, username equal to something, password equal to something, request parameters and their values will be dumped into a request object, okay, by the web server. All these things are done by the web server only. Okay, the Servlet lifecycle, each and every step in the Servlet lifecycle will be done by the web server only. Okay, the object server that we use. And the next step, it will create a thread. The next step, a thread will be created. A thread will be created by the web server. The next step, a thread will be created by the web server. The purpose of a thread is to execute service method by passing request and response created in step 4. So we call the service method by passing the request and response objects that are created in the step 4. In the step 4, a request and response objects are created and request parameters are dumped into the request object. Understood? And in the step 5, a thread to service method is created, and the purpose of the thread is to execute the service method. The task of the each and every thread. Why we use threads? To perform multitasking. Something like to perform multiple tasks at the same time. So what is the task of this thread is to execute the service method by passing the request and response objects. Okay. Now is service method taking the request and response objects? Will the service method take request and response objects? Yes or no? There is service method, obviously. It is there in the HttpServlet. Can you tell that HttpServlet service method will not be available to login Servlet? It will be available. So the service method will be executed. Either it is inherited from login Servlet, either it is inherited from HttpServlet or it is specific to login Servlet. Service method will be executed. Understood? Service method will be executed. Do we have service method in the login Servlet? No. So it will go to the superclass HttpServlet and the HttpServlet service method will be executed. Understood? Understood or not? Yes? From where it will get the service method in this case? HttpServlet. How it will get the service method from HttpServlet? Through inheritance. The method service from HttpServlet will be inherited to login Servlet. That inherited service method will be executed here. Okay? Inherited service method will be executed. What the service method will take? As we have earlier seen, the service method will take two arguments. The service method will take two arguments. One is HttpServlet request, second is HttpServlet response. These two arguments that we need to send to the service method. Service method will take two arguments, Servlet request and Servlet response. Where these are created? These are created in the fourth step. That Servlet request and that Servlet response objects will be sent to the service method. Okay? Who will execute the service method means? Service method will be executed. How the service method is being executed means? The service method is being executed by a thread created by the web server. A thread will be created by the web server, okay, to execute the service method, What the thread will do means the thread will execute the service method by passing the request and response objects. Okay, and in the service method, okay, just there will be a business logic in the service method of HttpServlet that, okay, if get, then go to, if get, then execute do get. This will be, there will be like a business logic in the HttpServlet like that. If get, then execute do get of request response. If the method is get, then so what will happen is either do get or do post is executed based on the method of form submission. Based on the method of form submission, either do get or do post is executed. If the form submission method is get, then do get will be executed. If the form submission method is post, then do post is executed. But every request should come first to the service method. From service method only, it will be navigated either to do get or do post based on the method of form submission. Definitely, each and every request will come to service method from service method only based on the business logic in the service method. Okay, the request will be navigated either to do get or do post based on the method of form submission. Understood? This will complete and then do get will be executed. Let's consider like the method of form submission is post here. So do post is executed, and in do post, okay, we have written the business logic and the do post method execution is completed. Okay, and this is the end of the request object. Request object will not be available beyond the service do get and do post methods. Okay, request object will not be available beyond these methods. Request object will be available only in do get, do post and service methods. Request object will not be available beyond these methods. So the request handling is completed. The step 6, the request handling is completed. So do get or do post is executed. The request handling is completed. Let's consider that there is another request to the same servlet. All these things will happen for the first request. Let's consider that, okay, when there is second request to the servlet. When the second request is sent to servlet, then from which step the process will happen? Will it happen from the first step? Let's consider like we have a servlet where we are sending 1000 requests to the servlet. That means we have a Gmail application login servlet, okay, where it handles the login of users. Okay. Now, if we send 1000 requests or 1 lakh of requests, will it create 1 lakh of servlet objects, or the same servlet object will handle 1 lakh of requests? How do you think? Same servlet, the same web resource will accept, the same web resource will handle all the requests. So, from which step the process will happen? Fourth or fifth? Or first or second? Just think for a couple of minutes. From which step? We have 1 to 6 steps. From which step it will continue for a second request? Analyze the steps and tell me from which step from which step it will continue for the second request. Analyze the steps, what the steps will do. If I send a second request, what happens? From which step the process is continuing? Just think once again. It will be a sequential. You cannot. The first step happens means definitely from first to 6 it will happen. It's not a jumbling process. Init parameters are the parameters that are specific to the servlet. See, did I tell that request parameters and init parameters are the same?
No, sir, that we know request parameters.
See, at this point of time, you need not to know how init parameters are passed. You know what is a init parameter? You know it is specific to a servlet. If that is the case, just tell me from which step the process will happen. Think once again. What guys? You are dumb again. You are dumb again. Fourth step. Why do you think it is a fourth step? Just speak out. Why do you think it is a fourth step? Speak out. Why do you think it is a fourth step? You are telling that servlet request and servlet response. You had told two words, servlet request, servlet response. Is that the explanation that you give? I am asking that, why do you think the process will go from the fourth step? You need to give some explanation, why it will go from the fourth step. Speak out, whatever it might be. See, if you told some answer means you have some assumption in your mind. Speak it out. See, if you don't speak out, you cannot get anything. I am repeating it once again. Software is an industry where we need to ask and take. They will not give anything to you. Even if you want hike, if you want promotion, if you want anything, even if you want food also, you should ask them. Speak out. Why do you think that it is the fourth step? Just for another request to the same servlet, if you send the second request to the same servlet, okay, the first step will not happen, just because the same servlet instance can handle multiple requests. The second step will not happen, just because servlet config will be only one for a servlet. For one servlet there will be only one servlet config. So even if there are 1000 requests for a servlet, servlet config will be only one, and init method will be called only once per servlet lifecycle. Okay, there are 1000 requests. Init method will not be called 1000 times, just because Why init method is called? To load the init parameters. Init parameters are servlet specific parameters. They are not request specific parameters. They are servlet specific parameters. So, if it is specific to servlet, will it happen for each and every request or only once per servlet? Will it happen for each request or once per servlet? Once per servlet. So, already that happened. So, it will not happen once again for the second request. The third step is not happen. The fourth step. Now, it will create HttpServlet request and response. Is the request different from the first request? See, from the first request we are clicking on submit button. From the second browser also we are clicking on submit button. Are those two requests same or different? Different. Since those requests are different and those responses also will be different. So, from the fourth step onwards, it will go on for any number of requests. For any number of requests, from the fourth step onwards, it will go on. Only for the first request, the first three steps will happen. For the second request onwards, just first it will create a request and response object. It will dump all the request parameters into the request object. It will create a thread to service method, and the purpose of the thread is to execute the service method. And what the service method will do means, it will call either do get or do post, okay, based on the form submission. And once the do post or do get execution is completed, that's it. The thread will be killed. Now, if there are 1,000 requests from the browser to the servlet, to the same servlet, there are 1,000 requests from the browser to the same servlet. Okay? Then, how many request objects will be created? If there are 1,000 requests from the browser to the same servlet, how many request objects will be created? Or only one? 1,000. Just because the request object is created in the fourth step, and the request object will be specific to a request. The same request object cannot be shared between multiple requests. Request object will be specific to a request. The same request cannot be shared between multiple requests. So, there are 1,000 requests, 1,000 request objects will be created, 1,000 response objects will be created, and 1,000 threads will be created. Okay? Each and every thread will execute the service method for each and every request. Then, if there are 1,000 requests that I am sending to the server, how many times the service method is executed? How many times the service method is executed? Just because there are 1,000 requests, 1,000 request objects will be created, and 1,000 times a thread will be created, and 1,000 times the service method will be executed. For each and every request, once the service method will be executed. If there are thousands of requests to the same servlet, how many times the do get and do post will be executed? Do get 1,000 times and do post 1,000 times? Or do get 500 or do post 500? Based on the form submission. Okay? If we have a form which is of type get, and from that form if we are submitting the request for 250 times, 250 times do get will be executed, and for the remaining 750 times do post will be executed. Depends on the number of requests that we are submitting the form, from the form. Let's consider like there are 1,000 requests, 50 requests are coming from a form where we submit using get, and 950 requests are coming from a form where we are submitting using post. Okay? How many times do get is executed and how many times do post is executed? 50 times do get is executed, and the remaining 950 times do post is executed. But how many times service is executed in that case? 1,000 times. First, the control will come to the, for each and every request, the control will come to the service method. From the service method itself, it will be navigated either to do get or do post. Understood? Understood how the request handling will be? And this is called the servlet lifecycle. And in the servlet lifecycle, the last step will be destruction of the servlet. One second. Last step in the servlet lifecycle will be destruction of the servlet.
in the step 1 we are creating a process, and that process I am the create the thread.
The step 1 we are not creating a process.
It's like
We are creating a object to servlet class.
okay, so right that means it is executing the sublet, right, sir?
Some?
And it is executing the servlet class.
It's not executing the servlet class. That's what I'm telling you. See, object creation will execute the method of a class. Will it execute the method of the class? See, if we create an object to some class, let's select there is a person class, and in the person class there is a test method. If we create like person p equal to new person, will it execute the test method of the person class? No. Yes, it is object creation, that's it. Once the object is created, then that object's service method is executed only in the 5th step.
So, but we want to create the some thread means internal process running, and then it will for the every request it will create the thread. So that process is the and what the process?
That will be taken care of by the web server. See, web server will schedule everything. Web server will come to know, yes, this is the request to login servlet. So it will search whether the login servlet object already exists or not. Yes, it already exists. So what it will do? It will not create a login servlet object. Directly it will switch to the step 4. It will create request and response object. It will get the existing login servlet object, and that object method itself is executed. Understood? Now, if an interviewer asks you like, there are 1000 browsers, from 1000 browsers, okay, I am executing my Gmail application. Let's select I have a Gmail page where I am logging from 1000 browsers. Are those requests handled one after another or simultaneously? Those requests are handled simultaneously. How those requests are handled simultaneously? Because how the requests are handled simultaneously means just because that request handling process is a multi-threaded process. Since it is a multi-threaded process, okay, simultaneously all the requests are being handled based on the efficiency of the server. If the server is pretty much efficient, then it can handle lakhs of requests. If the server is less efficient, it can handle only 1000 requests at a time. But it can handle any number of requests, but it will take some time. Sometimes we will get that, like when we are accessing IRCTC in a peak time on some Friday or Sunday, what it will do? It will tell that server is very busy. Why? Because each and every server will have some specific efficiency. Let's consider IRCTC server can maximum hold only 40,000 requests. If more than 40,000 persons are logging to IRCTC, it cannot handle that. The server will get hanged. Understood? Like that depends upon the efficiency of the server. But all the requests will be handled simultaneously. Okay? And the last step of the servlet lifecycle will be the destruction of the servlet. The last steps of the servlet lifecycle will be destruction of the servlet. When the servlet will be destroyed. Okay? When the servlet is not triggered, or when the servlet is not requested for a specific span of time. Okay? When servlet is not requested for a specific span of time, then what the web server will do means the web server will automatically destroy the servlet. When the servlet is not triggered, or when the servlet is not requested, when we don't send when there is no request for the servlet for a specific span of time, then that servlet will be destroyed by the web server. Okay, that servlet will be destroyed by the web server. Okay, or let's consider like there are thousands, there are some 100 servlet objects. Okay, then after some 2 minutes, there are some other 50 servlet objects to be created. Then the memory might not be sufficient. In that case, what the web server will do means web server will search. Okay? Are there any servlets, those who don't have any requests at this time? Let's consider there are servlets, those who don't have any requests. Then this web server will destroy those servlets. Okay? But most probably, until there is no competition for servlets in the memory, the servlet will not be destroyed. But either ways, if the servlet is idle for a very long time, or the servlet is idle and some other servlets are to be requested on priority, in either cases, okay, a servlet will be destroyed. We cannot tell it as a pinpoint, like at this point of time servlet destroy method is executed. But we can tell firmly that yes, when a first request is sent, init is executed. When we send a request from the browser to the server, then service is executed. We can tell it firmly, but we cannot tell it firmly when a servlet is destroyed. It depends. Depends on some algorithm executed by the web server. The web server thinks that there are more servlets to handle, and this is inefficient at this point of time, then it will destroy the servlet. Or it thinks like, yeah, for 1 hour there is no request, so then it will destroy the servlet. It's not the specific time. In most of the cases, it depends. Okay, most of the cases depends upon the competition between other servlets. Okay, if other servlets need more memory, then it will kill the servlets that are unused, that are not used at present. Whenever it is requested again, it will create a servlet. Understood? That's how it will be. That's how the destroy method will be executed. Now, let me override those methods. And one more thing, the init method is a overloaded method. In the generic servlet, init method is overloaded. Init method is overloaded. There are two init methods. One is noargs and another will take a servlet config. One is noargs, another will take servlet config. What is it? There are two init methods. One method is noargs, another is init method which takes a servlet config. Init method is a overloaded method in GenericServlet. It will have two methods. One is init method which is noargs, and init method which takes a servlet config. Both the methods will be executed. Both init methods will be executed in step 3. In step 3, both the init methods are executed. Okay, init which takes select config as well as init which is noargs. So, let me override the init and already we have seen how can we override the service method and what happens if you override the service method. Okay, now let's consider like I will override the service method. This is okay. Where it is. Now, if I send a request, if I send a post request to this servlet, okay, what are all the methods it will execute? Think once again. If I send a request to this servlet, what are the methods? If I send a post request to this servlet, if I send a post request to this servlet, what are the methods executed? Servlet? Service method of this class. Now, will it execute the doPost method? Will it execute the doPost method? No. Why it won't execute the doPost method? The service method of HttpServlet contains the logic to navigate the control to either doGet or doPost. But this method doesn't contain it. So, it will directly go to service method and it will destroy that. So, if we try to understood what I am telling? Understood? What, Babu? What the point? Yes? Sure? What did they tell? Did you get it or not? What did you get? Let me compile the application, restart the servlet. Now it will go to the service method. So it's not displaying anything in the browser. So directly it's going to the service method. It's not going to the doPost just because navigating the control to doGet or doPost will be there. That logic will be there in the service method of the HttpServlet. But that we have overridden. HttpServlet class service method is overridden here. So it's not correct. We should not override service method. Let me override init method. Let me override init method. Init method throws a servlet exception. Now will it execute the doPost method? Yes? What will be the first init then doPost or first doPost then init? Huh? Just what I'm asking the output. Like let me give inside init and inside doPost. Now what is the output? Inside init and inside doPost or inside doPost and inside init? Inside init and inside doPost. Just because first the control will come to init, then through service it will come to doPost. So stop the server. What happened? Did I start the server? Sorry, it's not start the server. So the control has gone to the doPost method. So this browser content has displayed as well as inside init and inside doPost are being. Now let me go once again to the login.html. Sometimes the information will be cached. Let me give some values. Click on support. So I'm sending the second request to the same servlet. If I send the second request to the same servlet, is it executing init again? No. Is it executing do post again? That means is it executing service again? Will it execute service again for the second request? Yes. Is it executing do post or do get means internally do post or do get will be triggered only through service. Then let me write a method destroy. Destroy method will be the same. Okay. One second. It will be separate. It will be separate itself. Okay. Stop the server. Recompile the application. I think it will not throw any exception. So destroy method will not throw any exception. It's my fault. Let me clear the screen. Start the server. So let me go to the browser. This Mozilla is like this here, so people will not perform. So it should not be like that. So now I have sent a first request to the servlet where init and do post are executed just because we have restarted the server. If we restart the server again, lifecycle will start once again. So let me send another request. Okay, again do post is executed. Okay, let me stop the server. Is it executing the destroy? Yes. Is it executing the destroy? Destroy of all the servlet that exists in the web server will be executed when we stop the server. Just because when we stop the server, the servlets are no longer valid. When the servlets are no longer valid, they should be destroyed. Okay? What the web server will do means, the web server will call the destroy method before destroying the servlet. Web server will create the destroy method before destroying the servlet. The servlet will be destroyed by the web server for sure. We cannot destroy the servlet through the code. We cannot destroy the servlet through the code. Servlet destruction will be done by the web server. But we can tell to the web server that when this servlet is going to be destructed, when this servlet is going to be destroyed. Okay, this is the logic that we need to execute. We are in the destroy method, we write some logic. If we write some logic in the destroy method means it is a contract with the web server that whenever the web server is going to destroy this servlet, this login servlet, it should execute this method. Understood? Some people will think that when we call destroy method, servlet will be destroyed. It's not correct. It is not correct. We may call the destroy method 100 times. But whenever we call the servlet, destroy method, the servlet should be destroyed means it's not correct. Even from do post also directly we can call destroy like this. Can't we call like this? Directly? Can we call like this? Destroy method from the do post or destroy from init? Can we call the destroy method? Yes or no? Yes or no? Why we can't call? Why can't we call destroy method? If you are telling no, there might be a reason. What is the reason that you think? I have called destroy method from the do post as a first statement. Why it is not allowed? Speak out. Why do you think it is not allowed? We are waiting for you. I have called destroy from do post, or I will call destroy from init also. Is it allowed or not? I have repeated the question, tell your answer. Is it repeated or not? Is it allowed or not? Leave about servlets. Leave about servlets. Think that it is a simple core Java class. Simple class which is developed in core Java. Can we call destroy from do post then? Yes, we can call. We can call destroy method from init, or we can call destroy method from do post also. But that doesn't make the servlet to become destroyed. That will not destroy the servlet. Calling destroy method will not destroy the servlet. But it is a contract that whenever the web server is going to destroy the servlet, then destroy method is executed. It's not the reverse case. Many people, 80% of the people will think that it is the reverse case. Will think that when destroy is executed, servlet will be destroyed. It's not the case. When the servlet is going to be destroyed, before destruction of a servlet, okay, the servlet destroy method will be executed. Why destroy method is used means, like finally, okay, whenever we want to write some shutdown kind of logic, we write that logic in the destroy method. We have any resources open in the do post, or if we have any resources open in the init, okay, we'll close the resources in the destroy method. Understood? Some kind of shutdown logic will be written in the destroy method. Understood? Now if I am the interviewer and if I have the question, if I call destroy from init, or if I call destroy from do post, what happens? So you mean to say that the destroy method call also will be like a normal Java method call. It doesn't have any importance. Doesn't have any importance. Whether we call destroy from init or do post doesn't have any importance. It will be a normal Java method call. Nothing will happen on the server side. It will be a normal Java call where destroy method will be executed. That's it. Nothing will happen on the servlet side or the servlet lifecycle. Nothing will happen to the servlet lifecycle even if you call destroy method. Okay? Nothing will happen to the servlet lifecycle if you call destroy method explicitly from anywhere. But if that destroy method is called by the web server, then it is the end of the servlet lifecycle of that servlet. Understood? So, the end of the servlet lifecycle will be with the destroy method. Servlet lifecycle will start with object creation, and we'll end with the destroy. Pardon? It will be like a normal Java method. But in general, as per standards, we won't do that. But since it is a Java method, there is a possibility to do that. But that won't affect the serverless lifecycle at all.
In the sense, we are overriding the and here we are doing the overriding the method means, so it is called the error.
See, the destroy method of HttpServlet doesn't contain anything. HttpServlet init with nox doesn't contain anything. Those methods are intended for initialization logic and destruction logic of the corresponding servlet classes that we develop. Those methods are empty methods in HttpServlet. So overriding those methods will not have any effect. Okay?
If we don't write destroy method, does it mean it doesn't destroy all the objects?
Destroy all the
Objects. But actually destroy method is used for destroying all the objects what we have created from the day.
Please come once again.
Destroy method is used for destroying, I mean it's a garbage collected all the objects what we have created.
It's not garbage collect. We can close the resources like file or database connections or nullifying any objects or anything.
If you don't write destroy method, does it mean it doesn't create what you have to do?
It may do that, but it will do that only at the only when the server is stopped. But until then, if we have 1000 servlets, what happens? Those 1000 servlets objects will exist in the memory, okay, until the server is stopped. So it will cause memory issues. Okay. Sometimes when we are running the applications, we will get garbage collected, heap space is not enough, kind of errors. When it will come means when we don't do proper shutdown activities, those kind of errors will come. Okay. See, if we have a room, okay, the room is capable of fitting with 100 chairs. But if we bring some 1000 chairs at a time, what happens? The room will not be capable for that. But if you bring 100 chairs in 10 intervals and replace that 100 chairs, then the room will definitely be capable for that. It's the same way. Okay? So this is how the servlet lifecycle will be. And next thing that we can discuss is how can we access those request parameters. How can we access those request parameters? We told that we send username and we send password, okay, or we send some other XYZ, phone number, email, city, state, all those values we send from browser to server, and they'll come as request parameters to the servlet. They can be accessed through the request object. But how we can access those parameters that are sent from the browser to the server through the request object? If I send 123 from the browser in the text field, if I type 123 in the text field, 123 will reach the servlet. But in the servlet, how we can get that value 123? Okay? All those things. There are several things that we need to discuss. Those things we'll discuss in the next session. Okay? Those things we'll discuss in the next session. Already, we are heavy today. Are we heavy? A bit heavy today when compared to the previous sessions. So, let's stop here. Let's assemble on Monday morning at 6 o'clock the same time and discuss how we can access the parameters or the value sent from the browser to the server in a servlet. Okay? Next class will be on